unapologetic, unadulterated, and uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the super fortress of intelligent Black thought. This is the BlackChannel.net radio. I am, of course, your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authorities, and with me is the 5-star Admiral of Intelligent Black Society, Professor Black Truth. Welcome back to the Black Channel, brother.
B1 family.
And we are here this Sunday because, of course, if it's black, it is the Black Channel, and we're glad to have you all with us here this evening. We'll probably be here for a little while tonight, so we're glad to have you with us here. Now, since this is a place that is able to deal with things in depth and is able to deal with things methodically, because we are the only place that can, we've gotten a tremendous response in regard to our posting about the fact that we want to put together a true Black, I don't even want to call it business convention. That's not even what I really want to call it. I want to call it a Black economic building convention. We want to establish an economic base and choose a couple of places in the country to do that, and we want to see that happen now. We are about 400 years overdue, but we want to see that now. We've gotten a tremendous response, so more is going to be coming out on that, and like I say, in the next 90 calendar days, I want to see that occur. I want us to get beyond this point where people are having to call me and ask about, I want to know how to start my own business, I want to know how to do this, I want to know how to do that, and let's get to where we're in a place where we can get Black business people and aspiring Black business people and lenders of capital to them and get them all in the same place. And of course, naturally, we'd also want to make it where if people want to relocate, because you got folk from all over the country relocating to South Dakota where they found those shale deposits. It's turned into a damn boom town. Well, this happened in the 1800s. The gold rush in California. It happened there. It happened in the early 1900s to Detroit. There was the steel rush and all the iron rush into Detroit. And what I'm saying is that we have an opportunity to do the same thing now for Black people. But understand, when they see that mass migration of Black people moving, that will be it. White supremacy is going to officially close the doors. They're going to say, all right, these niggas done went too far. They know too much. They're getting serious. They're going too far. That's what it means. I put up a post earlier today, and Professor Truth, I think this will segue into a lot of what you want to tell us about here tonight. I put up a post earlier today where I said, do you all realize that there isn't a single, not even one, not a single Black school, a single school anywhere in America that is named for a Black man or woman who ever killed or even hurt anybody? Do you all realize that schools that are named after people, there's not a single one? Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod Bethune. All these schools named after our icons. Not a single killer or murderer in the bunch. And the reason why I was thinking about this was because today I was going over some research and I came across Brigham Young. Now, for those of you who don't know about the Mormons and whatnot, they're responsible for killing quite a few people. Brigham was responsible for killing quite a few people, for those of you who do not know that. Go back and go check the history of it, and it wasn't accidental. It was recorded historically as an accident to prevent all-out war from taking place, but it was not accidental. And we can go down the list. I mean, technically speaking, if you want to get technical about it, Girard College, same thing. Really. Cecil B. Rhodes, Rhodes Scholars, same thing. We can go down the list if you like. George Washington Carver never killed anybody. George Washington killed a lot of people. A lot. Native Americans, Brits, blacks. The blood on George Washington's hands gushes and flows like a river. Brigham Young schools, same thing. Army, same thing. I mean, you all, your NCAA brackets, your NCAA tournament brackets read like a who's who of historic atrocities. And you don't have any black schools in there. That the only schools that wouldn't qualify under that would be the black schools, and those are the only ones who are not there. Maybe we should rename the NCAA Murderers Row. Maybe we need to do that instead. I don't know. Just a thought. Professor Truth, what do you say?
I say that when a people are dominated, your oppressor is going to reinforce how you can make yourself prominent through being safe. He's going to sit there and set up Booker T. Washington High, W.E.B. Du Bois Community College, and of course Martin Luther King on every boulevard in the black neighborhoods. But have you ever noticed that Martin Luther King's later teachings, especially before his death when he said, "We cannot wait," these things don't get talked about during Black History Month. They don't get talked about during Martin Luther King weekend. So even the safe Negroes, they don't even teach you everything about them. This is Mind Control 101. Most of you don't know what slavery was. Slavery, they teach you in the movies, slavery was basically taking a man and chaining him to a post like a dog. No. The Romans figured out a long time ago that if you weave slavery into the fabric of the society, then the oppressed cannot escape. Doesn't matter if you put chains on them or not. The society are the chains. Now, here at theblackchannel.net, we don't do any spirituality. When we discuss history, it's for the sake of illuminating the present and pointing us toward the future. And a book that I told you about last night called Gideon's Spies. It's the secret history of the Mossad, written by a guy named Gordon Thomas. It's one of the books that I have in my library. And as I was reading it, I wanted to see what was it that the Jews did that was different. Now, a little bit of background that we got to paint here. Shortly after World War I, the Ottoman Empire, which had been in control of Palestine up until that point, had fallen. The British came in and they established what they called the Mandate, which basically is the white man's giving himself the Holy Land. It was about that time that a lot of Jews, mostly from Eastern Europe, but others from Western Europe, and even the States, a handful from the States, began to trickle in. As this happened, the Arabs were looking and going, we got Brits to our left, we got an ever-increasing number of Jews to our right, and we are stuck in the middle. But at that point, a lot of tensions began to grow because the Jews have been taking the lessons of Adam Weishaupt and others and saying, maybe the Bible is going to give us our basis for a land where we won't be persecuted. All we got to do is get rid of the guys who are already there. Now, it was in the summer of 1929 when the Mossad, the first germ of what would become the Mossad, was planted. What happened was you had about 1,000 Jews who went to the Wailing Wall. And unbeknownst to them, the Arabs had a little welcome committee waiting. They started throwing bricks at them, started throwing bottles, and started shooting at them. A lot of Jews were hurt. grievously wounded. Miraculously, none were killed. But there wasn't going to, the wailing at the wall wasn't because of piety. It was because of pain. Needless to say, the Jews got the heck out of Dodge for a night. But the Yishuv, which is the Jewish community in Palestine, got together shortly thereafter, and they wanted to figure out what went wrong here. See, that's the first thing the Jews did. When something went wrong for them, they had a debriefing. They didn't sit there and say, let's hold hands with our enemies. They didn't sit there and say, let's get the chief rabbi together and maybe he can give us some good words. No. They said, let's debrief and look at this painful chapter and figure out what the world went wrong so it won't repeat itself. Now, one of the men who was present at this meeting spoke for everybody, and he said, we need to remember the scriptures from King David. Our people have always depended on good intelligence. You see, when the Jew looks at his religious text, he uses it as a means of empowerment. They weren't talking about love your enemy. They weren't talking about all the children of God. They looked at their holy book and said, what in here is going to give me power? And they said, our good book says rely on good intelligence. Now, let me go ahead and quote from the book here. All that the Yishuv leaders could suggest as a first practical step on that warm September night was to pool what money they could spare and call upon their neighbors to do the same. They got together and the Jews realized money was going to be their power. The cash would be used to bribe Arabs who were still tolerant toward Jews and who would provide advance warning of further attacks. Now I'm going to digress for a moment here. The Black Wall Street, that was our moment when we should have looked and said, time to put some of these good old boys on the payroll because we need intelligence of these good white folks who keep attacking us. We need to be forewarned. Now I'm going to continue. They would not depend on the British for protection. Let me repeat that because I want to make sure you heard it. They would not depend on the British for protection, but would be defended by the Haganah, the newly formed Jewish militia. In the months to come, a combination of prior warning and the presence of the militia faced down Arab attacks. In that period, the Jews continued to secretly expand their intelligence gathering. It had no formal name or leadership. Again, I'm going to repeat that. Their intelligence gathering apparatus had no formal name or leadership. Arabs were recruited on an ad hoc basis. Peddlers who worked in Jerusalem's Arab quarter and shoeshine boys who burnished the boots of British officers were put on the payroll, along with students from the city's prestigious Arab Rouda College, teachers and businessmen. Any Jew could recruit an Arab spy. The only condition was the information was shared. That's a code. The Jews had a code, and they needed to because the opposition, the Arabs, they also had a code. See, the Jews knew what it meant to get together, but the Arabs knew what that meant too. And I quote from the book, in every Arab mafef, the meeting house where local Arab councilmen met, came the same raised voices of angry protest. See, the Arabs were also organized. And the protests were, we must stop the Jews from taking our land. We must stop the British giving them arms and training them. The Jews understood that they were up against an organized offense, so they would require an organized defense. Now, throughout the land, young Jews rushed to join the Haganah. They became the core of a formidable secret army, physically hardened, crack shots, and as cunning as the desert foxes in the Negev. The network of Arab informers was extended. A Haganah political department was set up to spread dissension through disinformation. That means that not only were the Jews in control of themselves, but they wanted to make sure that they controlled their opponent. For example, there were two Jews in particular whose names will be very familiar to you: David Ben-Gurion and Yitzhak Rabin. These two men formed the leadership of the Haganah at that time. And Ben-Gurion's urging was for an upgrade of the Haganah's intelligence capacity, which was fully endorsed by the meeting. More informers would be recruited. The point there that I'm trying to make is they did not sit there and simply say, okay, we got 5 or 6 guys on the payroll, that's enough. They said, nah, we're going to have these people on strings. That's the reason why you sit here and go, I live in Paducah, Kansas, but when I look up, all the black folk are taking orders from Jews. Yeah, it doesn't matter if there's 5 of y'all in a broom closet. They want to be in control of everything. To continue, a counterintelligence unit would be formed to uncover Jews who were collaborating with the British and unearth, quote, Jewish communists and dissenters in our midst. Let me repeat that. The counterintelligence unit was formed to uncover Jews who were collaborating with the British and unearth Jewish communists and dissenters in our midst. What that means is the Jews set about purifying their ranks. They weren't looking for a big tent. To continue, soon Jewish women who consorted with officers of the Mandate, shopkeepers who traded with the British, cafe owners who entertained them. In the dead of night, the culprits were brought before Haganah drumhead courts martial. The guilty were either sentenced to be severely beaten or were executed in the Judean hills by a single bullet in the back of the head. The Jews were doing this in the 1920s, in the 1930s, in the 1940s. A lot of y'all sat there and thought that Black September in the 1970s, when the Jewish athletes were killed at the Munich Olympics, you thought that was the beginning. Hell no, they were down with gunboat diplomacy from the jump. Now, this is what they did in their own ranks. If a Jew was out of line, they dealt with you severely. This was enforcing of the code. But I noticed that reading this book, it doesn't say anything about any Jews who were complaining about it or saying, oh, you killed my niece, so there's something wrong. No. When your niece got put out, when she was out of line, they put her back in line with a bullet to the back of the head, and nobody said boo because everyone understood the code. The Jews were on a war footing. The Arabs seemed to think the Jew was playing with them, but he was not. Now, you all know that basically what happened next was between the Haganah and the Irgun, the Jews set up their army and they retook Palestine. And the result of it was the Arabs who were there were pushed out, and that was that. It was one of the earliest heads of the Mossad, Isser Harel, who when he took over, he said, the past is over. There will be no more mistakes. We will go forward together. We talk to no one except ourselves. Understand that. See, the Jews were not looking for ways to incorporate British officers. Even though the British were not their enemy, as far as they were concerned, the Brits weren't one of them. They weren't looking to integrate. They were looking to aggregate. And you wonder how it is that a handful of Jews kept whipping the Arabs 3 times in a row. The War of Independence, the Yom Kippur War, the Egyptian War. They just kept winning because they were organized with a code of conduct, and it started with their businessmen. Jewish shopkeepers who were tired of being targets of Palestinian vandals. They said, hey, them Jews in Germany might like having their windows broken. We don't. But the Mossad speaks to a philosophical difference far deeper than that. The mottos of the intelligence services tells you something about them. And the Mossad is qualitatively different than British or even American intelligence. The motto of MI6, the British Foreign Ministry of Intelligence, is Semper Occultus, always hidden. The unofficial motto of the CIA is, it comes from the Bible, John 8:32, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. But the Mossad's motto, although it comes from the Bible, is very different. It's Proverbs 24:6. By way of deception, thou shalt wage war. See, the Mossad's not talking about intelligence gathering. They're talking about power. They're talking about control. From their earliest days, counterintelligence was a key component of their national security. They have to control themselves through strict discipline and a code, and they have to be able to manipulate their enemies by controlling what the enemy sees and what the enemy hears. At some point, intelligent black society is going to be reaching outward to try to make sure that we put forward a substantive counteroffensive. I read about what our opponents do, and I do not have any illusions that the good Jewish liberals are on our side. The Jewish settlers in Palestine did not look at the British mandate officers as friends, even though they weren't enemies. I'm just taking a page from their playbook. Intelligent black society cannot afford to look to anyone but ourselves. Read history. I mean, really read it. Don't psychologically masturbate about the Egyptians. Look at the people who are winning. You don't have to be like them, but you better ask some questions about how the world they're getting what they want, and you can't get anything at all. They're dealing in the real world. And in the real world, Jewish shopkeepers want to keep their property. The businessmen rallied the people. I was reading the book and I was trying to find out where was the rabbinical chief cleric. Didn't mention him. Well, maybe they were talking about this or that rabbi. Didn't mention any rabbis. The men who controlled money looked and said, money makes the world go. They put the Brits on the payroll, put the Arabs on the payroll, and it didn't stop there, by the way. They began reaching out to Jews who were in both the British and American armies, requisitions officers, supply officers, especially those in North Africa, because that was the theater of the war closest to Palestine. And some of those Jewish supply officers just happened to misplace a truck or two, whose cargo of landmines and machine guns and rifles and mortars would show up in the Bekaa Valley. And nobody said boo. Yes, there's a lot to dislike about the Israelis, but you know what? They've got their piece of the world. They took it over. And they are not caring about whether or not you like that. They take no opinion polls. You could not find an Israeli on this planet who, if he sits in front of an Arab, is going to be feeling self-conscious no matter how many Arab children get blown up by Israeli missile strikes. They are not interested in making Arabs, or anybody else for that matter, feel comfortable around them. Terrence Howard was sitting in front of white people. He immediately started cooning. The Fraud was sitting on YouTube in front of a white woman, and he immediately started cooning. Can you believe that The Fraud actually said, and I quote, that white men are the most discriminated against people in America? He actually said that because he was talking to a white woman. The lesson that I want you to take away from the little passages that I read from Gideon's Spies is that the Jews, after hundreds of years of getting kicked around, King Edward kicked them out of England back during the 11th century, I think it was. Isabella and Ferdinand kicked them out of Spain in the 15th century. Then the Russian pogroms and such occurred, and finally the Nazis. The Jews learned something from that. What they learned was that a Jew standing there and figuring that he's going to make people think he's safe by just being the shopkeeper, or I'll do your taxes for you, nah, that ain't going to cut it. The Jew was going to need power, and he was going to need enough power where he could not be challenged. I don't blame him for doing what he had to do to secure his piece of the world. I don't blame him for that. I do not blame him for taking a hard-nosed approach to his survival. The numbers of Jews have grown ever since the establishment of the nation of Israel. And no matter where Jews are in this world, they all have the security of knowing that there is a rock-solid, hyper-zealous group of Jews in Israel who are behind a wall of nuclear warheads who say, if you ain't got anywhere else safe in this world to go, you got this place. See, there's not going to be a night of broken glass in Israel. There's not going to be any pogroms. There's not going to be any synagogues set on fire. Nobody in their right mind is going to sit there and say the Jews control the media in Israel. Forget that. Now, that's what the Jew was willing to do to ensure that his people do not fade from this earth. What is the black man and the black woman going to do to ensure that for our progeny? You're going to have to step on the toes of the very people who you've been self-conscious around. You are going to have to relearn how to trust each other, get behind an agenda, not a leader, but a plan, and have a code of conduct that is going to be iron rigid and viciously enforced. Some of you ask questions from time. You got to have some doubts about why it is that Jason goes in so hard on these people. Oh, he just snaps and chews on these guys. Yes, because we want a hostile environment for any assimilationists, for any intersectionalists, all of these enemies of black empowerment. We want to create a hostile environment for them. I saw a video with Dr. Umar Johnson where a lesbian was sitting there calling herself having an impromptu debate against him, saying that gays were pretty much the most important thing black people could be focusing on. We need an environment where somebody like that not merely is intimidated from speaking, but they know better than to even come into one of our meetings. And if someone does decide to come in, we need an apparatus in place which unapologetically weeds these people out and deals with them. Jason was telling you about how Ray Rice, his girlfriend, should have had the ability to go to a group of black men who had the ability to call some shots. And those black men would have decided who was out of line. And their ruling would have stood, and no one would have questioned it because the code would have been the law. Not the Constitution, not the state legislature. You go to Little Italy in New York or in Chicago. You go and talk to those people who have been in the United States for 3 and 4 generations now. When you go to their homes, they still speak Italian. When they go to the Catholic Church, they're still sitting there speaking Latin. And when they have a problem, they don't go to the police. They don't go to the city council. They go to themselves. A few years back when Jersey Shore was still on the air, a bunch of Italian Americans had a big problem with it. They didn't like the term Guido, and they didn't like the way they were being portrayed. They didn't march. They didn't rally. Instead, they got together and decided, what are we going to do that will be loud enough where Viacom will hear it? You can watch some of the meetings online. They got together, and the meeting that I saw, one in particular, got my attention because of who they brought there. They brought Linda Stasi. She's a writer for the New York Times, a journalist. They brought a gentleman whose name escapes me at the moment, but he owns a bunch of restaurants. They brought Fred Gardefee. Gardefee is a professor at City University in New York. They brought their businessmen, they brought their academics, and they brought their media people. And they were all of one accord. See, that's what the Italians did when they saw something they didn't like. They didn't bring their comedians, they didn't bring their actors, and they didn't bring their out-of-work actresses. They brought the people who could get things done. Now, Jersey Shore didn't get taken off the air, but Viacom at that point was looking and going, why don't you guys come in so we can talk to you? Okay, maybe we'll tone down the Guido stuff. We ain't going to stop it, but we'll tone it down. But one thing's for sure, they made it clear we don't want a repeat of this. And that Jersey Shore spinoff never materialized. See, the Italians understand that there is no substitute for having some power, wealth, and influence. When they came to the table to talk, there was some power that brought them there. That's the reason why they didn't show up in a begging posture. They showed up pointing their fingers and making accusations. And when they showed up, they came correct. They brought a coterie of people that was meant to say not just anyone is showing up to make accusations. We're bringing people who got money, people who have a media presence, and people who clearly have the ability to guide the intellectual direction of our people. Ain't no preachers, ain't no comedians, no social activists. They were serious about what they wanted. That's what intelligent black society has to do. That's the way we gotta be, because nothing else is gonna be effective. In a world where Raven-Symoné, who has been bleaching herself to oblivion, has been out there cooning to beat the band, we have to create an environment that's hostile toward these people. That's how you stop them from speaking against you. Don't sit there saying, well, maybe we can have some debates with them. They've got too much media influence for that. You need a media of your own that will say what you want it to say. So when Raven-Symoné decides that she's going to shoot her mouth off, you can get the word out to the people and let them know. Blow up her Twitter. Get on her Facebook. She makes a personal appearance, you be there. You make it known that Raven-Symoné is out of order. And when she sits there and gives some half-baked, half-hearted apology, you make it clear, unacceptable. Simply unacceptable. And when people understand that intelligent black society doesn't forgive or forget, then what's going to happen is they're going to start piping down some of that garbage. And a lot of coons who have been out there feeling that they had a safe zone with the white media will start rethinking a lot of things. It's not enough for Bill Cosby to get out of line and get his nigga wake-up call and come running back to black people and black people turn their backs on him. That ain't enough. We needed to have the ability to punish Bill Cosby before his white benefactors finally tossed him out. We needed to have the ability to put some lashes on him and put some real pain on him. Because the problem is, since Bill Cosby understood that he got on the bad side of white folk, that's going to tell the other coons just same old, like Raven-Symoné. She saw what happened to her former TV daddy. She's like, well, maybe I can get the job that Star Jones had. As for me, I've taken the stone cold posture that if I do go ahead and dig in my heels, that if I do put my enemies on notice, they'll go ahead and take some pot shots, but they cannot strike what they cannot see. That's what I was quoting from the book as well. Formless. That's how power operates. You can't see it, can't hear it, but you can dang sure feel it.
You know, brother, was another element here that's missing. And I wanted to talk about this before. For my brothers and my sisters in the New York area, one of my producers, Samuel Alarape of 7 a.m., he had He was in New York, and they were talking to other places. People wanted to screen 7 a.m., and there was one group of people who wanted to screen it, and he took it to them. And after the screening, there was one woman who is involved in the Harlem business community. And do you all know what she said? She said that she didn't like 7 a.m. She said that she didn't like it. And her reason for saying that she didn't like it was because she said that we got plenty of black businesses in Harlem. You all talking like we ain't doing nothing. We got plenty of black businesses in Harlem. That's what she said. So she was basically trying to say that 7 a.m. was casting an inaccurate characterization of the situation in Harlem. That Harlem has been gentrified. She was telling us that there was no problem. And when we asked, well, where are all these black businesses at? Do you know what she pointed to, everybody? Did she point to Red Lobster? You know, right down there by the Apollo. Did she go there? Did she go to Xerox? Did she go to Starbucks right there in Harlem? No. No, she couldn't do that because you see those are not black businesses. But she said that it didn't matter how many storefronts non-white people had in Harlem. She said it didn't matter. She said, take a look right here. And she pointed to the damn street. She pointed to the curb and showed us all the street vendors who can't be on the sidewalk after 7 p.m. Can't be out there if it's snowing or raining. That's what she pointed to lull us back to sleep. That was what she said success is. Success is not a brick and mortar building taking in tens of thousands of dollars a day. Groveling on the ground in her eyes, that is success. This is the enemy on the inside who seeks to drag every single one of us down and keep us in the sewer for life. She's in the sewer and she wants all of us to stay there with her. So she will tell you all that not having a storefront, that's okay for you. It is not okay for the people that are competing against you. It's not okay for the people who are gaining power and wealth. She does not want you to have power and wealth because in her psychoses, you will not need her anymore. And I want to know, how in the hell did she ever gain a prominent position of anything involving black businesses in Harlem? They were talking about this is the person to talk to. That's what they told us, that she was the person to talk to if you want to talk about business in Harlem. She's the person to talk to. She owns nothing, she has nothing, she does nothing. Black folk are getting straight run out of Harlem and she's done nothing to stop it. Nothing. Nothing at all. Black people are no longer even the majority in Harlem. Tell me when her strategy is going to bear fruit, people. Tell me when her strategy is actually going to amount to a damn thing. We've been waiting 20 years and you're almost completely exterminated in Harlem now with her telling you that everything is just fine. She did not say that things were not as bad as we said it was. That was not what she said. She said everything was fine. She flat out said that being run out of Harlem, gentrified to death, gunned down by the police, you own nothing, you control nothing, you have nothing, passing on generational poverty, she outright told us it was fine. She said it was fine. That's your black womanhood in the business community in Harlem today. There it is. You see the black females who actually don't think like that, the white corporations and the white companies come and snap them up. And we are left with mentally deranged lunatics like this. That's who we got, with folk following behind this Pied Piper of idiocy and saying that this is our representative of black business in Harlem. And I want to know what, first of all, how can your business community in Harlem be led and the men are not leading? That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you are going to have a woman leading, aren't you supposed to have an Attila Shabazz? Aren't you supposed to have somebody like that? You see, brothers and sisters, Professor Truth told you about the Mossad and told you about David Ben-Gurion. But there was another Jewish person, a Jewish woman. Her name was Golda Meir. She was a school teacher from, I believe it was Milwaukee. A school teacher from the Midwest United States. And when her feet touched ground on Israeli soil, she was the most cold-blooded and ruthless thing you could imagine. We will never know how many executions that woman ordered. But she wanted to make it clear that if you think that just because I got ovaries, I'm gonna start talking stupid, you got another thing coming. If you think that I'm going to preach the sermon of weakness and the sermon of irrationality, you're the one who's crazy. She wanted to show everybody that you thought David Ben-Gurion was tough. You thought he was. No. I'm going to show you tough. But the reason that you had a woman like that leading her people, the reason that you had that was because she was a reflection of the people themselves. Golda Meir was a reflection of the people themselves. Golda Meir was a reflection of the resolve and the grit and the steel of the people themselves. The people would not tolerate that type of idiocy and stupidity among them. They wouldn't take some cartoon character calling itself a leader that in the 21st century, if you are going to compete in a modern society, you must be fully equipped. And we got black folk whose business strategy is that we're already at the bottom of the economic ladder, and their strategy is to instruct us on how to survive at the bottom of the ladder, never to actually start rising it. Please tell me, where is her strategy to get you off of that damn street corner? How much inventory can you have on a street corner? What kind of products can you put on a street corner? How many customers can you service on a street corner? Can any damn body imagine Starbucks trading in their store to be a street vendor? And I'm not spitting on street vendors. What I'm saying is that being a street vendor should be recognized as where we start, not where we end up. That should not be the goal. And her goal is that black people in Harlem should remain the street vendors. And I ask you all, who needs Rudy Giuliani when you've got someone like this? Who needs Fox News undermining us when you've got someone like this telling you that I am here to represent black people, and black folk are, yes, she represents us. She's the one you need to go talk to if you want to do business in Harlem. She's the one you need to go talk to. And you go talk to her, and she gives you a pathology and a strategy that is a empowerment plan for white supremacy for the next 500 years. And that's what you got leading you in Harlem. That's what you have leading your business community in Harlem, or at least claiming it does, with people backing it up. That your business is going to be worth a few $100s, and the people across the street at Red Lobster and Starbucks on the same corner, your little table business is worth a few $100s, and the people directly across the street are worth a few $100 million. And she has no plan and no intent to get you to the level of the 100 million. Now, I want to tell you something right now, because I'm not a person who talks about places I haven't been. When I went down to Madison Avenue in New York to film 7 a.m., you've seen the footage of it. When I went down to Madison Avenue, Park Avenue, 55th, 56th, when I went down there and was filming 7 a.m., do you know what I didn't see in the most expensive real estate on earth? I didn't see a bunch of street vendors. I saw skyscrapers. I saw limousines. I saw taxis buzzing around like a beehive. You didn't see a bunch of street vendors lined up in the most expensive real estate on earth. I think we saw one guy with a fruit cart, and he was Hispanic, by the way, wasn't even black. I think you can actually see it in 7 a.m. I think we actually show him. He was the only person with something resembling a street, and I didn't see him taking any customers either, so it looked like a fruit cart, and there he was, but that was the only one we saw. That was it. Now, how much longer do you think that's going to be before that's the case in Harlem? How much longer do you think it's going to be before that comes down to Harlem? They let you stay there for now, and then eventually the rich people come in and say, if you ain't got a storefront, you got to go because you're driving down the value of my Starbucks. You're driving down the value of my Red Lobster. You're driving down the value of my IHOP. You got to go. You got to go. And they're just going to push y'all all off into this little old area. And that will be where black folk do business at, in this little hovel, where now they've got you isolated and concentrated, and you will still only be making a couple of $100. You will be frozen out from making hundreds of millions, and you will have listened to a group of people, to this ignorant little woman who is giving you all the recipe for a lifetime of servitude, to pass on poverty to your children as it was passed on to her. Brothers and sisters, we can't have any more mental patients leading us. We cannot have any more immigrants from Bellevue leading black society. We cannot have that. We can no longer tolerate a bunch of escapees from the 10th floor taking off their straitjackets, marching up to the nearest street corner, and we're listening to them. When we hear dumb things, we got to start calling them out for dumb things. And another thing is that with the Israelis, you can't lead if you can't show why you're leading. Black people are the only people on earth who will allow somebody with absolutely no qualifications, no proof of his credentials, not only to stand up and speak, but to stand up and lead. And have you wondered why it is that the dominant society's business interests in Harlem haven't really put the squeeze on those people as much as they have? Because they're waiting. All you have to do is just sit still. All you have to do is just sit still. Black people in Harlem are being led to slaughter today. Not the civil rights generation is still sitting there sucking the blood out of all of you today in Harlem, and white supremacy smiles and rubs together its hands with fiendish glee because they understand that their plan is working, that you will be led to the slaughter, and it will be a black face that leads you there. That you are watching your children raised in poverty with a black person telling you that they're helping your business community and that they are in fact crippling it, and it will never lead back to the white supremacists. And you are allowing them to stay there. We lack a code of conduct. We should have a code of conduct amongst ourselves as a people that runs somebody like her clean across 110th Street. Tell her go and sell her personal custom-made, copyrighted, patent-pending brand of ignorant ass up there on Madison Avenue. Go sell it up there and see who'll buy it. That's what should be happening in Harlem. Tell her if she wants to talk like Creflo Dollar, she needs to go where he is. As black people, we do not hold individuals like her accountable. And we do not hold other people in the community accountable. When you are promoting that type of lunacy, you should be held accountable for it. We should not be sitting there saying that you have a right to speak. You have no right to speak. You have no right to be heard. As I said when we were talking in Detroit, and I said this during the rollout of 7 a.m., I said it while we were doing it. They said that the problem in the black community is that we don't listen to each other enough. I said, wrong! The problem in black society is not that we don't listen enough. The problem in black society is, damn it, we got too many people talking and we listen. She said that the problem is that we don't listen enough. I said the problem is that we listen too much. She said the problem is that we don't listen to each other enough. No, the problem is that we listen to each other too damn much. The problem isn't that everybody doesn't get to speak. The problem is that every damn body can speak, but very, 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 very few people actually know what the hell they're talking about. In black society today, black society is the only place on earth where you have a project like 7. You've got something like the Black Channel, a place where we give you in-depth details. We give details. We name names. We give you dates. I told you all the information that you needed to know, all the equipment. I listed it. I put up whole videos on YouTube giving you tutorials on how to put together your own media, how to make your own film or your own TV show, how to make your own internet radio program. I put up videos that walk you through it step by step in intricate detail. If you watch one of my videos and you still don't know how to set up an internet radio broadcast, you are either too intellectually incompetent to do so or you just don't want to. If you watch my video on crowdfunding and how to do that, and you still can't get it done right, you just ain't trying. Or you're too mentally incompetent to do so. And people will come here and listen to a broadcast like ours. We give them a phone number where they can call in and ask questions on a broadcast like ours. And then they will go and immediately walk across the street and listen to the Happy Hotep hobos sit up here and talk about rubbing their chakras and the black woman is God, and all we need to do is just concentrate on our body energy, and if that's gonna save us. And then they will look back over here at the Black Channel and they will stay with the people who just told them no details on anything. Some of the Happy Hotep people lately, and this has been the most unbelievable thing. Professor Truth, you won't believe this. I mean, you probably will believe this. You see, money talks and bull jive got 4 feet. That's the way it is. When 7 a.m. detonated on America, and it has begun the long overdue work of changing the national dialogue in black society away from integration, segregation, and religious messaging, forget it, against religiosity. Do you know that the Happy Hotep hobos are now that they see that people are migrating away from these people and their vague generalities, now that they see that people are starting to migrate toward intelligent black society, do you realize that now some of these people are trying to do what we do here? Now, they're not doing it the way that we do it. Now, remember, you're dealing with the Hotep con men. So they call people in and they tell them that we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about economics. We're going to talk about how you cannot be broke. But then after they bring those people in, they give them no details whatsoever. Charge them $20, $25 a ticket. $25 a ticket, and give them no details whatsoever about how you can do it. Telling everybody that they're balling out of control. No empire that we can see, but they're trying, now that they see that people, the problem with 7 a.m. for these people was that we spent a lot of money. We spent a lot of money getting the word out that for the first time ever, you all looked on network TV in the biggest markets in America and you saw Dr. Claude Anderson on your TVs. You heard Dr. Claude Anderson on your radios for the first time in your lives saying that the issue is business. The issue is what you own and control. The issue is economic empowerment. That was what you saw. Nobody could touch it. And now the Happy Hotep hobos who spent their lives selling you on their own version of the religious pastor preacher man hustle, now they realize that, oh hell, there's a new breed in town. And they're talking about some real stuff. They can offer the people something real. Let me explain something to you folks. When Creflo Dollar did that interview with that Atlanta TV station several years back, and he said that when people criticize him and whatnot, that doesn't bother him because what inspires him is seeing that people have hope. That when he gets done talking to them, that people have hope. That people can see the light. Brothers and sisters, what the hell does that mean? I finished talking to you all, and what did you get out of it? Well, do we have information? No. Do we have intelligence? No. Do we have an actionable plan? No. What do we have? You have hope now. He charged you $25 so that he could give you hope. Will someone please tell me, how do you measure hope? How do you measure it? How do you even confirm that you have it? And if you do have it, how do you measure how much of it that you have? I didn't say how much you feel. Tell me, how do you measure that you have it? And then tell me, how do you measure how much you have? You see, these religious, spiritual, Mayet, Hotep, con artists, they know what they are doing. They are the enemies of the people because they know what they're doing. They know that they ain't selling y'all nothing. They know that they're talking for hours and not saying anything. They know that. They know that. But what other skill do they have? Have you all asked these guys what their skill sets are? Have you asked them what qualifies them to speak? Have you asked them what they can produce? They know that they're not actually telling you anything, but they're charging you real money to tell you nothing. They're offering you fake speech, but they want you to pay real money to get it. A lot of you think that you're free from Creflo Dollar, and in fact, you're talking to Harvey Hotep. And he ain't doing nothing but giving you the same damn thing. He's just giving you the same thing. This is what we allow in black society. That now they're trying to do what we do here at the Black Channel. They're trying to do what we do here. They're trying to imitate what we do here, but they're already starting the work of trying to corrupt it. They're already trying to take the work of, they're going to take a couple of the true elements of what we say here, and then they're going to try to put their own religious con man spin on it. And I'm telling you all now that we're not going to allow that to happen. That we want to put together some events, and we want there to be an all-out, full-scale invasion of Harlem by intelligent black society. That it is time for us to run these frauds, fakers, and money changers out of the temple. There can no longer be any place for them. nowhere in black society. We are going to point to those skyscrapers that white supremacy is lording over the people from, and we are going to say the goal is to storm them and beat them. And if you are not a part of the apparatus that is going to take on those skyscrapers, you got to go. You got to go. You cannot stay. And then we have to enforce it. Then we got to enforce it. But that's going to depend on us. That's going to depend on the people you're listening to right now and the generation sitting right in front of you. That is going to depend on us and what we do. Literally, nothing else matters. Professor Truth, you are a scholar of this in history. When people try to take movements, when they start gaining traction, and then they try to start contaminating and diluting the movements. And when people start this miscegenation upon the masses, and when they start this deviating upon the masses, and when they start this diversion on the people of taking the truth and then trying to mix it, that we went from saying that we wanted to have equal education to saying we want integration. They took the truth that we wanted equality in education and hijacked it and turned it into integration. Professor Truth, how much progress, or at least what should be the goal here? In now that we see that this is what the turn is going to be, that some folk think that they found a way to make a little coin by turning black empowerment into the next religious hustle. How do you see us dealing with that?
By making it clear that they have to bring something real to the table. Instead of it being the old, I got a nice line of game, that ain't gonna work. The definition of black empowerment will be based solely on tangibles, solely on results, and nothing else. If this guy's talking about hope, well, Barack Obama talked about hope. How'd that work out for you? If this guy's talking about something in the hereafter, nah, we ain't looking for the hereafter. We're looking for the right now. If this guy is sitting here talking about spiritual gifts are more important than worldly goods, then go ahead and tell him, give me the clothes off your back, give me the money in your wallet, give me the house that you live in, and give me the car you drove here in. You can clothe yourself in spirituality. See, that's something that these Hotep fakers, these Hotep hucksters never understood. That's something they never got. While they were busy looking at the preacher man hustlers of the 70s and 80s, the guys who they learned that crap from, the preacher man hustlers who started off on a street corner yelling like a lunatic until he found a couple of people who said, oh, he must be full of the Holy Ghost. No, he's full of holy crap. That's what he's full of. But the Kunchis community looked and said, hey, if they can yell and get some attention and get some money for it, I can do it too. See, it's the same game with a different spin on it. We're not talking about games. We're talking about something real. If this guy is sitting here telling you about business ownership, it's like, brother, are you talking about partnership and aggregation? Now I'm talking about some principles. Man, you can miss me with all that. We are talking about black people making real moves right here in the real world. John G. Jackson was talking about that, forming co-ops. So brothers who are sitting here just basically trying to give you an empty gospel of an empty gospel of empty economics. We already know the importance of economic empowerment. At this point, it's a matter of forming the teams to get the damn thing done. That's how we're going to make sure that our message doesn't get diluted and polluted by a bunch of fakers and frauds. We are going to run so fast the scumbags can't keep up. But I'll tell you right now, black empowerment must be a club, and the price of admission is tangibles. You must show what you have built. It is not enough for you to say, I aspire to. You can aspire to anything. Show me what you got. Show me what you've done. That's going to run off a lot of black people right there. because black people think that they can talk their way around it. And when you look at the conscious community and the people who actually come out to hear these fraudsters, you realize that to an extent, they're right. Unfortunately, a lot of people do have an appetite for fakery. And they know that what these guys are preaching is more or less a total lie. But the problem is, at the end of the day, it's easier to listen to some clown tell you the importance of economic empowerment than it is to actually write up a business plan. It's easier to listen to some clown tell you how he's balling out of control than it is for you to confront him and say, brother, maybe you and I need to go ahead and get a couple of business ventures off the ground. But now, if you know the guy that you're talking to is a fraud, at the end of the day, you'll listen to him. But you ain't going to actually sit there and say, let me go ahead and do business with this man, because you know that he's broke. He's a freaking con man, and he's going to have you in the same sorry shape. So when Jason puts together these ideas talking about having a real black economic forum, doing this stuff offline, I can tell you right now, a lot of the black people who show up, they're not going to be ready for this. When they show up, they're going to be like, here's my card. Brother, your card is nice, but that card better be connected to a real business, a brick and mortar store. It better be connected to some tangibles. Well, you see, I got some plans that plans are nice, but we got a separate area for people who are still at the planning stage. We need some tangibles. Well, my cousin, he had a business before it went broke, and I learned some things from him. That's nice. Where are the tangibles? Black people are always telling you about what they gonna do, what they used to have, and what might be. While white power, Asian power, and Hispanic power is running the boards with what they actually have. That's not a higher standard, folks. That's just a standard, period. And the discipline must be evident. A brother comes up to you and for some god-awful reason, he's making a ton of promises that never come true. That lets you know that this guy is not one of you. He's a permanent resident on the coon train. And it is okay to hate these people. Oh, Professor Black Truth, you saying we should hate? Yes. We need a world where it is going to be this or that, so that the line is clear between right and wrong. In this current age, either you are fighting for black empowerment or you are fighting for black extinction, and there is nothing in between and nothing other than that. You will either prosper or you will die. There will be no survival at the bottom, because the powers that be have already figured out now how to make sure that the machinery, the gears of industry are so efficient now, there's not going to be any more crumbs at the bottom. You see some of those poor ragtag people in Pakistan and India who actually go through the landfills looking for anything that might be salvageable. Human beings living like cockroaches. Those days are coming to an end. And it's not going to be a matter of showing up with machine guns to gun you down. It's going to be a matter of starving you for the essential resources that you need. Black people have failed to learn the lessons of history, like the Armenian genocide. When the Turks went into Armenia, what they did was they would force the people up into the hills. They didn't kill them there in the villages. They forced the people up into the hills where there's no food, no water, no shelter. And when the people tried to come down, even to surrender, the Turks would kill them, shoot them dead right there on the spot. They killed the people by starving them for resources. That's what black people need to understand. This genocide is going to look very different from the Black Wall Street. It's going to look very different from King Leopold. This is going to be a genocide like the kind that took place in Australia and in Tasmania and in the Carib Islands, where they sat there and decided that all we have to do is make it where we keep these people on the run. Food, We're going to shut them out of society altogether, shut them off from the resources, and watch them wither on the vine. Or better, we ain't even going to watch them wither. They will just simply melt away. And it worked. And it worked amazingly well, because the truth of the matter is, if I make it where you can't eat, how long are you going to last without food? How long will you last without water? This is how you carry out a soft genocide. You don't round the people up, you shut them out. And what are the happy Hoteppers bringing you that's going to protect you against this? The last time that I asked that question, it was, we're all Detroiters now. Where were the black so-called leaders? What were they doing to protect you against the white economic assault? A lot of black people sat there and said, oh, it ain't going to be as bad as all that. Now these people are strangely quiet. Yeah, reality tends to shut people up. The next move for black empowerment is going to be aggregation offline. Yeah, the documentaries are good. There will be more. And as we get together in this place, this safe haven that we have created, where we reaffirm our commitment to black empowerment, this is good as well. But at this point here, it's time to start choosing targets. The economic war is on and has been for 1,000 years. But you know what? I think the war will be a little bit more fun if we start fighting back. You got to start choosing some targets. Find that block that is going to be taken over. I was telling you a moment ago about how the Arabs had the mamafef, the houses where the Arabs would get, the council houses where the Arabs would get together, and they would decide how it was they were going to be running their parts of the city and put agendas on the table to be carried out. And the Jews had a similar one with the Yishuv. What is the black PowerPoint, or rather PowerPoints?
Well, it's supposed to be the church, isn't it? I mean, that's where we gather at. So the church is, that's where we gathered together to learn how to integrate, rather. At one time, we used to kind of use it for that, but we turned our gathering points away from being places where we aggregated power and turned them instead to places where we fought to use the love of Jesus Christ to convince white society to give us sexual access. Can we just be honest about what the civil rights generation was trying to really do with that? They really wanted to use the Bible to pressure and shame white society into giving them sexual access. They didn't give a damn what happened to the children. Every church in America, we got them with flowing through billions of dollars, and yet the neighborhoods are slums. They can't even gather to get the people together to start discussing, hey, here is the banker who works at our church. Here's the banker who goes to our church. Why don't you start talking to the people? We got folk in this church who want to start a business or improve the business that they have. Why don't you sit down and tell them what they need to do to develop their business plan, get their credit together so that they can get a sizable loan? Why don't you sit down and tell them this? They don't ever even speak that. And the reason for that is because, brothers and sisters, there's a reason that Creflo Dollar is still in business, even though he shouldn't be. There's a reason that he is, even though he shouldn't be, because he is paid by our enemies. Can we just be completely honest about that? He's paid by our enemies. He's compensated by our enemies. He's protected by our enemies. They've assured him there will be no investigations into your money and what you're doing with it. You see, they took Jim Baker down and they took Jimmy Swaggart down, but do you notice they're not doing that with Creflo Dollar? You notice that? Doesn't matter how outlandish what he does is, they let him ride. Nobody's going over his books and looking for malfeasance. They're going to let him ride because they understand that he serves an essential goal. He reaches a segment of the population that Kenneth Copeland and his other mentors simply cannot. His job is to destabilize and misdirect black empowerment from the inside. And that's what he's doing. Because we as a people are tolerating it. We're tolerating it. We have allowed these individuals to be our representatives, and that's exactly what they're doing, because black people as a group, since we don't actually have a national sense of purpose, that allows in these types of con men to speak for the people. That's what allows them in. Now, what I want are the people to lose their taste for it. There is only one essential question that matters for you as black people listening to the sound of my voice tonight. Do you want the 21st century to look like the previous 5? That's all that matters. When you get past all the other talk, that's what it comes down to. Do you want the future to look the same as the recent past, or do you want it to look different? Do you want your children to be able to put up plaques and paintings and portraits of you in their houses the way that your opposition posts up pictures of Cesar Chavez and Batista and Fidel Castro and Mao Tse-tung and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson in their houses? What I'm saying is, are you ready to stop making up daydreams and make-believe science fiction about the pharaohs, and are you ready to become one? Are you ready to do something for your children that your parents did not do for you? Are you ready to give your children someone in their family that they can be proud of and can look up to and can say with their chest, your children with their little chest poked out with esteem, that's where I come from? That white supremacy tried to talk us into just being street vendors and keeping us poor and just barely making it and getting by on a street corner. But my daddy was a conqueror, and he said no. And do you see that big skyscraper over there that has the shadow on all the others? That was what my father built. He went from that street corner that they tried to keep him on, and he went over there, and now he owns the other skyscrapers as well. That's what my father did. Or do you all want to stay with Miss What's-Her-Name in Harlem? Do you want to stay there with her? So that you can bust into a wistful chorus of the rent is too damn high. By the way, I think that guy finally got evicted here recently, didn't he? I think he finally got evicted. All of his screaming and caterwauling about the rent is too damn high, all of that political protesting that he was doing in the mayor's race in New York, pretending to do, all of that political activism and political protesting, that is what political protesting without economics does. You can talk, you can yell, you can scream, you can talk about what you're upset about, and ultimately, when the day is over, nothing changes. You are still going to get evicted when this is all over. Just now, everybody knows you're the guy who got evicted. And I want you to ask yourselves, do you want that to be your story? Or is it time for something different? Professor Truth, I'll let you have the last word.
Folks, we started off by examining how the Israelis came to establish the Mossad. The Israelis were unapologetically Zionist, unapologetically Jewish. They were not concerned about controversy, they were concerned about conquest. They didn't care about being diplomatic, they cared about being dominant. The result of that, the nation of Israel exists, and there's not a damn thing anyone can do about it. I don't blame them for that. I'm looking and going, black folks, we could use a lot of that. black first.
Brothers and sisters, it is no longer optional. It is no longer a matter of opinion. It's no longer any of that. The time is here now. Those of you who want to move forward, you will move forward with us. Those of you who are still operating on the level of children, those of you who wish to remain children, those of you who think that you are going to be able to operate and think and have the intellect of children, and that other people will simply make you their wards, let me tell you something. There are only two types of people who are referred to as wards of the state: foster children and inmates. And that's it. You will listen to people who will teach you to be free, or you will listen to people who will teach you to be wards. But I gotta tell you, going into the 21st century, they're building plenty of new jail space. They just had a story here in Philadelphia. They are going to be taking the $300 million that they've gotten. They're going to be using it to close a bunch of schools and to open a brand new prison. Now, they're going to close the current prison that's there and shift everybody over to a brand new, nice, clean, and tidy state-of-the-art prison. No money for schools, however. We don't have $300 million for a school. We do have $300 million for prison. Now that we do have, because you see, schools cost money and prisons can actually make money. They are no longer even, they're no longer even being subtle about it, no longer even being covert. You can go on YouTube, and in 7 a.m. we brought you, of course, the story of the bombing of Move. In 1985, we brought you the story of the bombing of Move. And how it is that Mayor Wilson Goode had succeeded Frank Rizzo, but Frank Rizzo had his running buddy, at the time the prosecuting attorney in Philadelphia, Ed Rendell. Ed Rendell, who said it, and it's on video, and nobody has asked either him or Hillary Clinton about it, and you need to now. Ed Rendell said it, that the police would have been justified to walk into that house and shoot everybody, including the children. And Ed Rendell went on with black people clapping and making him the governor of Pennsylvania. Black people are the only people on earth who cheer and congratulate our executioners. And he outright said it. He backed up Frank Rizzo every step of the way. And now that apparatus that Ed Rendell put into place, no, there is no money for schools for you people. Because the end game is not to educate you and make you competitors with our children. The end goal is to create a wall-less, gateless gulag, where the entire society operates as a concentration camp. And that you will be the worker-slave class at the bottom that gives us a constant base that we may feed off of. Now you have to decide, do you want to be one of those people operating at the low level who gets fed off of? Do you want to be their food? Do you want to be somebody's meal? Or do you want to be a man? That's the question that you have to ask yourself now. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the BlackChannel.net radio. I am your host, the Black Authority, with Professor Black Truth. And until next time, brothers and sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.